Welcome to the Steelers Realm Podcast. And now, here are the boys of Steelers Realm, New Jersey Dev, JT, and the famous TA.
Hey, Steeler Nation. Welcome back to another edition of the Steelers Realm Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, JT. Followed on my left in the heart of Browns country, it's the famous TA. TA, how you doing this week?
Doing great, Steelers Nation. 2-0. Excited about our guest.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned.
Absolutely. And to my right, on the other side of the state, it's New Jersey Dev. How you doing, Dev?
Doing great as well, but I'm sure nobody cares how I'm doing. They're all here to listen to our special guest here tonight. That's for sure.
That's true. Without further ado, it's my pleasure, Steeler Nation, to introduce former NFL player, NFL assistant coach, and NFL head coach, as well as co-host of Inside Pro Football Podcast. Welcome, Coach Mike Mularkey.
Glad to be here with you guys. Very glad.
Glad to have you, Coach. And before we get into some big questions that we have all lined up, Steelers Nation has thrown up at us to ask you. Just a quick rundown. We'll go through some questions. We'll call this our Steel City Star Steeler Spotlight of the Week. So I don't know if you've had a chance to check out some of the Steel City Stars videos. This person has just a plethora of vintage Steeler footage, one of which was of you taking a shot too. But we'll get into more of that. We also want to thank one of our affiliates, Instacart. Don't go out shopping; you don't have to. Go out to SteelersRealm.com, click on the Instacart banner, sign up for an account, and they'll do the shopping for you, bring it right to your door, set it on your table, and save you all the hassle. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it, Coach. We know you couched the Falcons tight ends last year prior to retiring, but why don't you tell listeners what you've been doing since?
Well, I've been quarantined, like our listeners. I had no idea when I decided to retire in mid-February what was going to happen to the world. And so I'm not sure the difference between the term retire or quarantine, but I've enjoyed my time away. I can tell you. I'm still young. I'm 58 years old, and I coached 24 years in the NFL and played 9. I did my tour of duty in a really stressful environment for a long time, and I spent a lot of time away from my family, a lot of missed time with my wife and my 2 sons, and now they're have their own families. I have 3 grandchildren, and I have enjoyed. They both live here in the Jacksonville area near me, and so I have been. I'm called Gampy to my 3 grandkids, and I've enjoyed just the time I've been able to spend with them. And then I hope to start traveling with my wife, who she must love me because she spent, all the time in the NFL with me and all the things that we went through. I hope to travel with her all over. So I think I'll come out of retirement. We have too many places we want to see, and so we will not have time to come back out of retirement. So we're all set. We're enjoying it.
There you go. Congratulations.
Nice.
The podcast, like you mentioned, Inside Pro Football on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So where we try to give some insight behind the scenes that most people have no idea take place, both playing and coaching, since I had so many roles as a player and a coach in the NFL over the 33 years I was in it.
Yeah, no, certainly. And Coach, we kind of want to jump in here first to your playing days. So you were originally drafted by the 49ers in the 9th round of the 83 draft. And were obviously cut at the end of camp, and the Vikings picked you up. You spent 6 years with them, 3 years with the Steelers. But you almost never got a chance to see the field after being cut. So my first question for you would be, what would your message be to former players that maybe you had to cut or release, or really any current player out there like your Ryan Switzer's, for examples, that was released or cut recently and may think this is the end?
Well, that's the beauty of it. Back in 1983, that was the quarterback draft. Elway and Marino and Kelly and all those guys. I was a 9th round pick. So in today's world, I was really a free agent. So I've been drafted, but I really was a free agent. I've experienced it all as a player, even free agency going to Pittsburgh there in 1989. But I've always been a big believer in, I've always worked hard. I mean, that's one thing I'm pride myself in. And I think what I did in that 49ers camp was show that I could play in the NFL. And I try to stress that to players, that you are evaluated every play of every game that you're ever involved with by every team. And they do their homework, and they know, especially teams that like physical players, high effort players, smart players. And you're constantly being watched, you're constantly being evaluated. And if you're not good for one team, there's plenty out there that are looking for somebody that's, what the Vikings did. They picked me off waivers. And so I just say, don't give in. If this is what you want to do, I would still continue to work, be ready to play, especially with the injuries that are going on, even as of this weekend. Ryan can play. I'm using him because you did. Ryan can play in this league. And I'm sure he's staying in shape. He'll get another shot, but just, believe in yourself. And most time that worked out for you.
Yeah, certainly. We're big fans of the guy. We're rooting for him because he showed up to camp in tip-top shape. So we were a little disappointed when we saw that move. But, over the course of your career, you've certainly played with some really talented players. Chris Collinsworth at Florida. You had with the Vikings, you played with Randle McDaniel, Anthony Carter, Jan Stenerud, first pure kicker in the Hall of Fame. I think you played a little bit with Archie at the end of his career, and Rich Gannon at the beginning of his career there too. And obviously the Steeler greats, Dermontti Dawson, Rod Woodson, as well as your Neil O'Donnells and Bubby Bristers. But who would you say the most talented player you ever shared a locker room with was?
Well, there's a lot more names than that you just read off that I was blessed to have played with. But those are all good football players. But really what's interesting is all those guys that you just named are really good people and really good. And when it comes to that Archie Manning, having Peyton as a ball boy when I was there in Minnesota, I've known Peyton for a long time now because of that. But really blessed to play with a lot of guys. I'd have to say, talent-wise, you named a couple of them in Pittsburgh there. Dermontti Dawson. Not many can do what Dermontti could do. The thing Dermontti could do for you, if you have a center that can pull in space and block guys in space, you actually you level the playing surface, because if he can get out, you actually can. Now your numbers match up. You can block hats. The term hats on hats. You can have hats for every one of their guys when you had a center that could pull like Dermontti did. And as nice as a guy Dermontti was, his nickname was Dirt. And because he would do everything he could physically to embarrass you. And then he'd help you up, but he's going to bury you. And then Rod Woodson, hard to compare Rod with anybody with his cover skills and his physical tackling for a corner and his return ability. And then the toughness. I think you guys remember when, he hurt his knee early in the season, came back and played in that Super Bowl. Right. That alone says, there's not a lot of guys, especially these days, that would do what Rod Woodson did that day. And there's not a lot that can play like Rod Woodson. So you're talking about really a couple of good players right there with me in Pittsburgh that I'd pick.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Peyton or Eli was a ball boy up in Minnesota. Was that around the same time? Because I think you also were teammates with Larry Fitzgerald's father, right?
Well, his dad was a radio guy in Minneapolis. So I've known Larry a long time too. I've been around a long time. So I know a lot of these guys. I was trying to tell somebody, I was a backup holder for Jan Stenerud, and today in this world, I can tell you probably 9 out of 10 people are like, who is Jan Stenerud?
Wow.
And I'm like, he's the first kicker in the Hall of Fame. He was unbelievable. But I'm getting out there where names now, people don't recognize them like they used to.
We sure do.
Yeah, certainly. Something that I kind of came across, I think it was episode 1 of your podcast. But was hoping that maybe you would share this with Steeler Nation. The story about how you requested a tryout from Tom Donahoe. And as a fan of the Steelers growing up, getting a workout, then getting signed to the team that was your favorite team. Tell us about that story.
Well, in 1989, that was the first really edition of free agency in the NFL. It was called Plan B. Teams could protect 37 of their players, and everybody on top of the 37 was free to negotiate with all other teams. And I at that point, I think I had 6 surgeries on my knees. And I didn't get a lot of play as far as anybody wanting to sign me. So I asked my agent, I said, look, I grew up a Steelers fan. I've been a Chuck Noll fan. Can you get me a workout in Pittsburgh? I've never played there in my 6 years in the league. I just like to come into the city, see the locker room. I'm still a kid at heart. I don't care if they sign me. I don't know if they'll even sign me with my knees. But just get me in there. And they did. They brought me in. I had a real brief workout with Tom Donahoe, who was a scout at the time. And I got a phone call when I got home. And I just told my wife, I said, hey, I had lunch. We threw a couple passes. Three River Stadium the turf was torn up. So we literally stood off to the side. And I get a phone call from Tom Donahoe, like, hey, you're the perfect kind of guy we need here in Pittsburgh. You could have a chance to start here. You can compete. And I'm like, I have no idea what I did. My wife asked me, what'd you do at lunch? I don't know what I did, but I jumped on it when they showed interest. I wanted to go to Pittsburgh, and I still believe black and gold. I still do.
Yeah, man. Great
so,
story.
Coach, I got to ask, I mean, being that you were there for Chuck's last 3 seasons, I mean, we all know the great things that Chuck did, and some may say that Chuck may have stuck around the game too long. That last year, that 91 year, we finished 7-9. Really seemed to be going in the wrong direction. I mean, was there any sense that Chuck was ready to hang it up at that point, or knowing Chuck and everything he did, by the time you got there, did it seem like you wish you would have played during the earlier years at Chuck, or did you think he still had a great mind for the NFL today?
I just caught me off guard. In 1989, when I was in Pittsburgh, and we started out 0-2, 51-0 drumming by the Browns at home in Three Rivers, and then going to Cincinnati and getting beat 42-10. Offensively, we'd only scored 3 points, and Chuck came in. I'd never seen it before in my years in playing college, but I felt like we were 2-0 after those 2 games. What he did that season, and again, if you guys remember, 1989 is the only year Chuck won the Coach of the Year. When we went to the divisional playoff game, after we were 4-6 at one point, and Chuck came into a team meeting and said, look, a lot of things have to happen across the league for us to make the playoffs, but what we have to do is win 5 of the next 6 games. And I was sitting next to Merrill Hodge, and I looked at Merrill and I was like, now, does he understand we won 4 of 10? Okay. But he wants us to win 5 of 6. And everybody, I mean, just the odds of everything happening across the league had to happen, and they did, and we did. And, we went into Houston and beat a team that was 10-point favorites, and then into Denver and just lost to them in the last minute. They were 10-point favorites. And that, to me, that was such a big influence on me on how Chuck handled the team. We never felt like we were ever down and out. So in 91, and I'll tell you what happened. After that season, Tom Moore left and went to Minnesota. He was our offensive coordinator. When Tom left, so did a lot of the tradition of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense for sure. And Joe Walton came in, and Joe's an excellent football coach, but that offense of personnel and that offensive philosophy was not built for Joe Walton. And so we struggled in 90 and 91, but I did not see Chuck leaving. I actually was hoping I was going to get a chance to join his staff because I was retiring. I mean, I had completely broken down at the end of the 91 season, and I already had talked to Chuck about a role on their coaching staff when he did retire. So I don't think anybody saw it coming.
That's a good point you bring up there at the end, which kind of leads me to our next question here. So, Coach, along with Chuck Noll, you're also around some other legendary coaches during your playing career. Your Bud Grants, Jerry Burns, Pete Carroll, Monty Kiffin, and John Fox, to name a few. Being used as what the media would describe as mostly a blocking tight end throughout your career, and with the numbers of surgeries you've shared you had. Obviously, too, besides that big year in 1990, you caught a lot of balls that year. But with that being said, at what point did you decide to get into coaching? And, who / what was the inspiration behind that?
Well, early in my career, I knew that I wanted to coach. Another name you can mention, just being drafted and being with him in a camp was Bill Walsh, which again, things that he said short time there with him, I still, used as a coordinator and head coach throughout my career. And even Bill Cowher, I coached for Coach Cowher for 8 years there in Pittsburgh as tight ends and coordinator. So I was around a lot of Hall of Fame coaches. And, but I liked game planning. I couldn't wait for the game plan to come out and see what we were going to do. And I had thoughts that you could do off the game plan. I mean, I was always scheming myself. If I could do this, I would do that. I always felt that way. And even, another coach, Mike Shanahan, who was at Florida when I was there, I would tell these guys, even as we're getting ready to play them in a pregame, hey, I'd like to coach. Keep me in mind next time you get a coaching position open. I was constantly working the system early in my career to let these guys know, hey, when I get done playing, this is my next, hopefully my next endeavor.
Nice.
It certainly was. As you spent the rest of your career, 25 years as a coach. You started out at.
I went to IBM. I went to IBM when I retired. No, I did not get hired in the NFL to coach for 3 years when I left. So I had to work the system to try to figure out how to get my foot in the door and not let them shut it on me. So it wasn't like just an automatic go from player to coach. It wasn't that way. I went in the real world and got a taste of that, but I never gave up. I never gave up my hope to be a coach.
Yeah,
so, Coach,
spend your time in the cubes.
So Coach, I got a question then. With that being the case, was it Sam Weiss that ended up reaching out to you for Tampa Bay, or is it through other channels that actually landed you your first job in coaching?
So I was working at IBM and I was sending letters out to these coaches around college and NFL. And the thing about Sam was he's the only one that would always have a coach on his staff call me personally to tell me, hey, I don't have a position available for you. And I would get letters and I'd get form letters, and there'd be very few personal letters saying we don't have anything. So my third year into it, here came the phone call from Tampa Bay again. I'm thinking, here comes the same phone call. And this time there was a position open, quality control coach for both sides of the ball, offense and defense. And I had no idea what that meant. I do now. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but he just said, are you interested? And I was, and I went down to the Senior Bowl, and to show him my interest, I showed up on the 50-yard line when he was standing. I said, look, he asked me if I'm interested. I flew down here. I left my IBM job. Nice. And I'm here for that job because I'll get back to you. And I said, I know you will, because you've always done that. And from that, I took that my whole coaching career, same thing. When anybody ever reached out to me, I personally had myself or one of my coaches personally reach it back out to coaches because I knew what they were going through trying to get their foot in the door. So that was a big thing. But Sam gave me a chance, and then I repaid it back to Sam. When I was a head coach in Buffalo, I hired Sam to be my quarterback coach because he needed another year based on our retirement to get his retirement. So I was able to repay Sam years later. And Sam and I became extremely close. I miss him to death right now.
Nice.
Yeah. So anybody that leaves their IBM job to go to Mobile, Alabama, they certainly deserve a spot.
Yeah, how close I was to being an IBMer. I mean, very close.
So how'd you end up in Pittsburgh? Again, for the second stint, is it under Cowher?
Well, we got fired after our my second year in Tampa, and Tom Donahoe called and asked if I would be interested in the tight ends job, and that was a no-brainer. So I jumped on it. So that's how I got back there and coached them for 5 years, the tight ends. Again, if you ever ask me who one of my favorite players is, it's Mark Bruner. So, one of my favorite and one of the most physical blockers in NFL history to me. So, yeah, glad I got to go back and spend 8 years there with Coach Cowher.
That's a name that comes up on our podcast often. We're all huge Mark Bruner fans.
Yeah. I can remember going down to training camp and having him watching the sled drills and just blowing the sled up every time. He didn't have to even look to know who was going through there at the time.
No, he has some of the strongest. I one time made the mistake of lining up in front of him to try to show other young tight ends how to do it. I came home that night and I had 10 black and blue fingerprints on my chest, and my wife was like, "What in the hell happened to you?" I said, "Don't worry, it will never happen again. I will never line up in front of Mark Bruner again."
Nice.
He abused me.
That's a great story.
Bruner.
I think you were just one of many he abused. But,
absolutely.
Something you alluded to a little bit ago was your desire to kind of coach out of the box, so to speak. So we're hoping maybe you could share how the nickname Inspector Gadget kind of came about and how you were able to get creative with the talented multi-positional players we had, like Slash, Antoine Randle, and then, of course, one of my favorite players ever, Hines Ward.
Mine too. No, I call them special plays, gadgets. I love them. And I had guys that could do them. And that was the biggest key. You know, they had such talent for what they could do. Any one of them could line up at quarterback for us at any time to keep defenses off balance. And I knew, we ran in my 3 years there as a coordinator, we ran over 140 gadgets. I was going to run. If we had 6 up a game, they were going to be run every game. I mean, they're going to be called and run. And they were successful for the most part, a lot of them. And I knew teams were preparing for them every week, and we never ran the same one twice. So I knew it was keeping defenses off balance week in and week out. And there's a lot more to what I did with those guys that I can't get into just because of time. But, yeah, people will go, "Why didn't you do that in Atlanta or Miami as a coordinator?" Because I didn't have those kind of players. And I just didn't have that kind of talent to do it. So all of a sudden I became dumb and was not Inspector Gadget anymore.
Well, it's all relative to your, the talent on the team, obviously. So,
hey, man, you made Tommy Maddox the comeback player of the year.
Yeah.
Well, because I played what Tommy could do. I did what Kordell could do. I played to Kordell's strengths, my first year as a coordinator. The year he went to the Pro Bowl, we won 14 games that year with Kordell at the quarterback because we did what he did best. And I made things much simpler for everybody, including him, so we could play faster. But the one thing I kind of pride myself in was my deception of keeping defenses off balance one way or another. And Tommy doesn't do that with his legs, but I knew Tommy could, in a 2-minute drill, pick you apart.
Yeah.
So Tommy was interesting. He wrote me a letter. He was out of the league for, I think it was 5 years, and wrote me a letter. I can't even tell you who our backup quarterback was. And I said, "Bill, we got nothing to lose. We're struggling here. Bring him in." And we sat down, and he threw like spirals in warm up. And I looked over at Coach Cowher and said, "That's enough. I don't even care if he throws a route. He's already better." and that's how we signed Tommy Maddox to be the comeback player of the year.
I feel like it might have been T. Martin for some reason.
I love T. Hopefully, no nothing against T.
Kent Graham.
Well, Tommy was better than Kent.
Yeah.
You don't get the name Tommy Gun or nickname Tommy Gun if you can't sling it or run, that's for sure.
Yeah, he could sling it.
That's it. Well, Mike, if you could turn back the clock, where would I probably hate these questions, but would there be anything during your coaching career that you might have done differently or changed?
That's a good question. I'll tell you guys this. I've always prided myself in doing the right thing in this business, and I can't say that's true about everybody in this business. It's a very cutthroat business, and a lot of guys will tell you that. But I allowed myself at one point when I was in Tennessee to get caught up in something I regret, and I still regret it. But the ownership there, Amy Adams Strunk and her family came in and told me I was going to be the head coach in 2016 before they went through the Rooney Rule. And so I sat there knowing I was the head coach in 16 as they went through this fake hiring process, knowing a lot of the coaches that they were interviewing, knowing how much they prepared to go through those interviews, knowing that everything they could do, and they had no chance of getting that job. And actually the GM, John Robinson, he was in on the interview with me. He had no idea why he's interviewing me, that I have the job already. And I feel, I regret that's because I pride myself in my kids first, that they do the right thing. And I always said that to the players, and here I am, the head guy, not doing it. And I've regretted that since then. It was the wrong thing to do. I'm sorry I did that. But it was not the way to go about it. Should have interviewed like everybody else and got hired because of the interview, not early on. So that's probably my biggest regret.
Wow, that's a touching story, and appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah. So Coach, it's not hard to do the right thing. It's really not. You can get caught up in this business.
Yeah, I followed your career almost entirely, and I've always been rooting for you, always. I mean, I just thought that as an offensive coordinator, you were probably one of the greatest that never got the accolades that you should have gotten. But then when you received that head gig for Buffalo, I mean, I was so excited. But then it was one and done, and then off to Jacksonville, and then to Tennessee. And you made mention that this is such a cutthroat league. Why do you think that nobody gave you a chance to implement all of the knowledge, all of the talent that you have, and all? I don't understand why you never got more than 1 to 2 years of coaching to actually implement your system.
Well, that's a good question. I've told my wife this. I said, if anybody has gone through what we've gone through in our head coaching career, I'd be shocked that they're still married, first off. But I'm sure there's not a lot that have experienced what we have. And, again, I have to remind you, in Buffalo, I resigned from that job after my second year. We went 9-7 my first year, which is the first winning season they had in, I think, 8 years. And just the direction that management was going was not being the team was not being built for success, and it was only going to continue to downslide. And I was not hired, and I did not want to be a head coach to be in a position to fail, watching it, knowing it was going to happen. So I resigned, not knowing how it would be perceived in the NFL. Not a lot of guys retire from this or resign from a position like that, but it was the best thing for my family. I've had no regrets over it, none. That I did that. It was what was best for my family. It's always been that way. Jacksonville, that was a one and done. That needed some time to build. It's hard to do anything in a year in this business. I mean, very hard to do it.
I'm sure.
So very difficult. And I was disappointed with that because my son was a scout for the Jaguars, and I was more disappointed that I only got a year with them than being able to continue building a team there. But and then Tennessee, we went from the worst team in 2015 to 2 back-to-back winning seasons, a playoff win in 2017. I just think they had things in mind. They have that New England thing going around the league here. They think everybody's a genius that comes out of New England because of Tom Brady, but
right.
That's kind of what's taking place. The GMs are New England guys, and then they're hiring New England coaches, and you're seeing how that's going across the league in some of these places. But that was I was very proud of our staff, because you talk about we had the first pick of the draft in 2016 to a playoff team, winning team. 2 years later, that's pretty hard to do.
Yeah.
So very proud there, but I think they had a hidden agenda initially when they hired me.
And you bring up a good point about New England. And when you look at the Steelers, everybody wants to talk about the coaching tree. I mean, you can go back to Bill Walsh and the coaching tree that he's put out, Belichick, the coaching tree he's put out. But when you look at Marty Schottenheimer and then you look at Coach Bill Cowher and you look at the tree that come off of there, why do you feel that we haven't had that same success in coaching that those other teams have? And I guess most importantly, when you look at the Steelers' only nemesis over the last couple of decades have been the Patriots.
Yep.
But the coaching staff has been spot on.
Yeah. I don't know. It's an interesting question. I don't know. Because I know the numbers that have came out off of Coach Cowher's staff, and I don't know. I wouldn't put too much into it. Some guys like being there. I mean, that's, they've had opportunities maybe to interview. They can decline them. I don't know why that history is like it is.
All right. Well, one last question, Coach. Seeing that you have done a great job in announcing and presenting yourself, you've got your own podcast. Why are we still listening to Phil Simms on Sunday and not Mike Mularkey?
Oh, I don't know. No, I did when I took a year off. I did a little bit for Fox and Pro Football Talk. I did a little bit of that, but nothing's come about. I haven't pursued it, and nobody's come knocking on my door either. I've enjoyed the podcast part of it, and I'm enjoying retirement. I've got no regrets, and we'll see what happens as we move forward. Hopefully something comes from this podcast, the podcast Inside Pro Football that we have together, Bill Peterson and I.
Well, it's a great listen, Steelers Nation, and just, football fans in general. I've had an opportunity to listen into a couple episodes, and great insight, Coach. Thanks for doing that.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you letting me share, especially with Steeler Nation. I'll be back. I told you, I've told the Rooney family this, who I love, and it's best ownership in football, that I'll always bleed black and gold, and I'll be back. Hope to make it up for a game this season if we can get over this COVID thing.
Nice. Hopefully you let us know when you're in town. We'll get you lunch. But
that sounds good.
Any tips for us when we break down the game here? We don't want to let you down.
I was always a good, bad, and ugly guy. I wanted to always present it in those, in those fashions. But I always wanted input from the coaches, and grades on their players, and then grades from the performances of their schemes, and then I'd address the team. But I wanted all the information. I want to gather as much information before a lot of things change from when the game's over to when you put film on, and it can be either good or bad. So you got to give the chance for film to show what really happened.
Awesome. We won't let you down.
So, Coach, I got a question on that. All of us armchair quarterbacks, we'll look at it, we'll analyze the game, and the one thing we always want to do is we always want to bash the coach, or we want to bash the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator. As a head coach, not that you bash your coaches because they're family to you, and I get that, but do you ever sit them down and give them the good, bad, and the ugly grade after the game?
I think that kind of comes with whatever phase they're dealing with. No, I'm a pretty positive guy. I want to find positive in every negative. You got to be careful with some people, how that can affect. So I'm, and again, like I said, Chuck could always Chuck Noll was phenomenal about making you feel like you had just won the game. You got lost 51-0. So, there's a lot to be said about how he coached and why he was so successful, and he had a big influence on the way I did things. So you got to be careful out there when you're watching things. There's a lot of it's a fast and violent game, but be careful who you're murdering until you get a chance to actually see what's going on in a little slower speed.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah,
everybody gets
keep an eye out there this week, Coach, because we're going to be sharing a lot of old footage of you via our friend over at Steel City Star this week.
Right.
So lots of good film there.
Well, I hope so. I got some great memories from that place. I really do.
And fans of you too, Coach. So, hey, want to thank you again for coming on, sharing your stories with us and Steeler Nation, and we'll make sure to give your podcast links out there to everybody.
That'd be great.
Yeah, certainly. It is the Inside Pro Football Podcast, and it's phenomenal. Bill and you do a fantastic job with it, and I think you could go a lot of places with it. So thank you so much, Coach, for your time. It's been a pleasure having you
Thank
on.
You,
and we'd love to have you again if you're open to coming on again at some point in time.
We'll do for sure. Thanks for let me do this with you guys. Have a good night there.
Thank you. You too, Coach.
Good evening, Coach. Thank you.
All right, well, there you go, Steeler Nation. Coach Mike Mularkey.
Can't be Mularkey.
Telling it like it is.
He threw it all out there. There was no Mularkey in that, was there?
Nah, there wasn't. You guys.
Well, he said, I don't know if he said this when he was on the air with us, but he said he can't get fined by the media now. So
yeah, so
he says what he wants. So.
Well, let's jump into it. Before we do that, let's see. Don't forget about Steel City Star. Check them out there on Twitter. That's where you'll find a lot of those videos posted up too. Also, want to give a quick plug out to our affiliate, Diamond CBD. It's time for me to reorder my gummies too, my Yum Yum gummies. But anyhow, go out to SteelersRealm.com. Check on the link at the very top of the page with LT pointing the way. And go out and look at thousands of CBD products, all good stuff, high quality stuff. We are definitely regular subscribers to the Yum Yum gummies.
Don't forget to put in the coupon code Steel Realm, all one word, at checkout. Get you a fat 60% off.
Good point. All right, Steeler Nation, well, it's that time. Let's dig into the Broncos game. Another win. Pretty. No, I wouldn't call it pretty. I would call that kind of a messy game. As Coach said, the good, the bad, and the ugly was pretty much the eye test to it. But, hey, we came out on top, and I guess that's what matters at the end. But let's jump into it as far as, our take on the game. Let's use Coach's outline and go through the good. TA, why don't you jump in first, go through the good, what we saw from the game.
The good was the first sack and the first takeaway that resulted from Bud Dupree. And we can't forget TJ. I mean, let's face it, TJ started that, and Bud finished it, and Mike scooped it up to give us our first turnover. And it looked like we were off and running. Too bad.
It was certainly good that sack happened after those Melvin Gordon rushes right up the gut.
Yeah, because it didn't look like we were prepared at all. At all. Especially after we put in such a fine performance against Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, certainly. What happened there? Huh. Well, he certainly didn't. He certainly didn't have a good game yesterday either. Unfortunately,
well, Saquon tore his ACL. Unfortunately, yeah, poor kid.
I know. But, what a shame.
Yeah, early on, Gordon was kind of doing what he wanted up the gut, like TA allotted to there. That strip sack kind of saved us on that down, and it really was the story of the day. And I believe Ben even said, in his presser afterwards, the defense continued to bail us out time and time again. But I guess the first quarter, it was kind of neck and neck. In the second quarter, we pretty much owned that quarter. I'd say we highlighted that quarter, and the big play there would be, Deontay Johnson taking that 81-yard punt back for a touchdown that was nullified by an illegal block in the back by Camp Sutton. But very next play.
And I just want to go ahead and elaborate on that. The officiating for this game was less than subpar, because that was not a block in the back. He was going down, and he just happened to ride him, and he held up, and they threw the flag.
Yeah, threw his arms up.
Yeah, I didn't like that call.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, we were penalized 10 times for 89 yards on the day, which came back to, bite us in the ass time and time again. Really kept the Broncos in the game. But, Claypool on that 84-yard touchdown, that first career NFL touchdown, it was great to see him, especially a big body guy like him, tiptoe up the sideline. And what that put us up 14-3. So, the rest of the way in the second quarter, we kind of owned. We just didn't take advantage there at the end of the half. Once again,
exactly.
After that what's that?
I said exactly. I was pretty disappointed. Papa's son was over for the game too. By the way, we're going to get him on here one of these days again. But we looked at each other like, "Are you serious? Like we couldn't take advantage of that?" And I think that would have certainly gone a long way to putting a throat on them, putting your foot on their throat at the time. But we were both pretty disappointed that we hadn't ended up having to settle for a field goal there. What was it, 3 running plays in a row?
Yeah, all from shotgun formation. Yeah, we'll touch on this a little bit here after we kind of highlight some things. But I don't understand why Derek Watt's not in the game at that point. But took us 17-3 at the half. So second half was certainly all Broncos, though, right, TA?
Yeah. I mean, this was a Dr. and Jekyll game. I mean,
there's one.
There's one. I'm telling you, it was ugly. It was ugly. We did everything we possibly could to hand it back. I mean, even when it started out and we wasted a 49-yard kickoff return by Dev's favorite player, Ray.
Ray. Yeah,
Ray.
Hey, he interacted with us on social media this week.
Did he?
Likes
Nice.
us. Yeah. Trying to get him on. Been pressing him.
Well, I'm hoping Ray comes on because that boy's got some moves. But there wasn't much in the third quarter to go ahead and get excited about unless you were a Bronco fan.
No, and I had this question too. Why do we get away from the run? Why so many passes? Was it that they were doing something to stop us, or they were giving us an opportunity to throw the ball better, or was it the fact that our running game just wasn't working? And if that was the case, why?
Well, I'm not even.
That's a good question.
Yeah, because I'm not even sure about that. I mean, in the first quarter, Connor looked great. Then we went to the pass. And then what, Dev? How many yards did Ben throw for?
On the day, Ben threw for
338, something like that? 338?
Yeah, 311 yards.
How many attempts?
He had 41 attempts, and at one point there, to kind of go back to JT's point about getting away from the run, we had a double-digit lead, and Ben threw 16 consecutive passes with a double-digit lead.
Which brings me to my next point. We have a quarterback who is just trying to get back into it. In all theory, this is his second preseason game. Why in the hell are we planning on throwing his arm out of socket second game in? Run the rock.
Run the rock.
Seriously. But hey, the Broncos came the whole way back. They cut it to 17-14 when Bush, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, was pretty much just bodied and beat up by Noah Fant there in the second half all day. But we responded, opening up the fourth quarter, to the Broncos touchdown drive with one of their own, which was 75 plays, 9 yards. And Ben was doing, vintage Ben things. He hit Ebron over the middle. We converted a 4th and 2 at the Broncos 35 with the Juju shovel pass. It wasn't a run on 4th and 2. And then Ben had the vintage scramble rollout pass to Deontay Johnson that he is famous for a 28-yard TD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looked good doing that too.
Broncos are right there. We stopped them. Derek Watt tackled the punter. What was that, Sam Martin, who basically got hit in the gonads with the snap, forgot to catch it. And we got a safety, but on the ensuing play, we go back to the run, and Benny Football puts the football on the turf.
Second week in a row.
That's what I keep saying, man. The only thing holding him back from being a great football player is him carrying the ball like a loaf of bread. So,
well, now here's my question to that. We've watched Deontay put the ball on the ground very first touch of the play 2 weeks in a row, and he's come back and made himself look like a superstar. We ain't been able to see that from Benny.
Well, I mean, he kind of got shut down after that point. I'm pretty sure he's on a short leash with that stuff. 2 weeks in a row, Juju bailed him out last week with recovering that fumble. This week, nobody was there to bail him out, but Broncos then what? They cashed in on the Snell fumble, where they hit Melvin Gordon on that wheel route on Vince Williams, isolated linebacker in coverage. What's new? That was the story of the second half.
Yeah, it was.
You got to give the Broncos, what's that, Vic Fagano? You got to give him credit. He made halftime adjustments. He isolated our linebackers, specifically the weak spots.
He certainly did. Certainly did.
Yeah, Devin Bush.
That middle soft zone over the middle there was suspect once again.
Yeah,
that's kind of becoming a Tower or a Tomlin trait in a way, as to how to take advantage of the Steelers' defense, like that soft zone over the middle, or the Y crossing double X triple over the top combo stuff they were running last week. That we really
annexation to Puerto Rico.
Yeah. To understand all those routes, you'd have to be a mathematician. But anyhow, so all right, guys, let's wrap it up here. Good, the bad, and the ugly. There was a lot of all of that, but let's go above or below the boards and rate it on offense. What would you say, TA?
I'm gonna go with a B-.
Yeah, I'm going to go with C, and that's directly correlated with the play calling. You know, put Ben under center in 4th and 1 and 4th and goal situations, or you saw what Derek Watt did at the end of the game. He sprung that 59-yard run that iced the game for Connor. So that's directly correlated with the play calling, in my opinion.
And let's also mention, too, it was him that got the safety for us as well and knocked the ball out of the end of the end zone.
Yeah, right. All right.
The Watts really had a banner day, you know, and the whole Watt family of athletes, you know, on the day that Steelers finished with 7 sacks, 2.5 TJ got. And then he also moved to 9th place all time on the sack list with 36 sacks. Yeah, he passed Lawrence Timmons, Kevin Green. But the rest of the Watt family of athletes also went off. You know, you had Derek Watt with 2 special teams tackles, like Todd said, and that huge block. You had Kalai Ohai Watt, wife of JJ. She scored 2 goals for the Chicago Red Stars in the WMLS. And then JJ did end up getting 2 sacks in a losing effort against the Ravens. So big day for the Watts.
Unfortunately. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the C2 on the offense. I just thought they were average at best. Especially with the talent that they have. Could have put this team away very early and somehow let them stay in. I don't know. Am I going to blame the offense on that? Yeah, kind of, I guess. So, all right, let's move on to defense. Excuse me. TA, how would you rate the defense?
There's been nothing on the defense there that has me scared. I mean, I thought that Terrell Emmons was right there in coverage. He wasn't burnt. He was actually right there. Magic Mike, that boy was all over the field, played an excellent game. Minus the third quarter where all of a sudden Fant got allowed back into the game. Mm-hmm. That might have been my only negativity on that. Other than that, sacks, turnovers, they're still coming. Stopping them short inside the 20. I mean, the defense stepped up again. That was a defensive win for us because we needed it there in the fourth quarter, and they did it. I'm going to give them an A.
Okay.
An A.
Dev?
Wow. I mean, they definitely bailed us out, as Ben said after the game, but, you know, I'd give them a B- just because they didn't make any second-half adjustments, and that showed with Bush in coverage, Vince Williams being isolated. I mean, the Broncos did a really good job putting guys like Nick Vanette, who's 6'7", and Noah Fant, who's 6'4". They isolated them on Devin Bush, who's 5'11". So we really didn't make any adjustments there. So.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to give them a B plus, not to take away from some of the good things they did, but I think I saw some things that were a little bit concerning on the D. It seemed like Joe Hayden didn't have such a good day. A couple stupid penalties. Obviously that middle zone coverage, linebackers covering on some receivers. I saw Vince Williams out there a couple times, not really much into the play. So other than that, Minka with a horse collar, I didn't think he had that great of a game either. So that's why I'm going to go with a B plus. So, okay, let's wrap it up.
Holy shit. Hold on a second. Hold on. You guys are rough. You're talking about a defense that didn't allow a 100-yard rusher or a 100-yard receiver and went ahead and had to adjust to a scrub quarterback who they did not game plan for. You guys are rough.
well, let's leave it at that. But that's what I saw, the eye test. We have a high standard, TA. So
you don't want to tell everybody what they want to hear. Like, hey, Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl.
Well, they are.
Defense in the league. Now they maybe so, but all righty. Well, let's keep going here. Special teams. Go ahead, TA. Start us off with special teams.
Ray. I'm looking forward to Ray. Ray and Deontay both had pretty decent return games. All in all, though, it still needs Bazooka Joe or Bazooka Dan needs to tighten it up a little bit because Deontay Spencer, he got a little bit more yards than what I'd like to have seen.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the special teams unit had a banner day, and I would give them an A. With what we've talked about, but also Chase Claypool, 3 tackles, one solo tackle, getting down there on punts and kickoffs. I mean, other than the Colquitt shank, which he made up for it when he got that hold down before the half on that bad snap. But other than that, special teams A. Yeah,
I'm going to give a pretty good grade. Pretty good grade, too.
Killing me.
I thought Claypool was reminiscent of James Harrison in his special teams days. With the first one down, and he was the one at the bottom of the pile that had made the initial contact. But he had a solo tackle out there, too, didn't he?
Yep.
I mean, he made a nice stop back there.
Yeah, he went down and smacked KJ Hamler. That's for sure. And, him having the day he did, as well as, let's not forget, just real quick, Kevin Dotson. He did not allow a single pressure on passing downs on 42 pass blocking snaps.
Nice.
The rookie. And that earned him the game ball, which Ben gave to him to give to his father, who is a lifelong Steelers fan.
Nice. What a great story.
And, too, you got to highlight Ben.
Yeah.
Ben had another great day, And the stat that sticks out to me the most here, folks, this might get everybody excited out there. TA's probably got a chub on me just even starting to read this, but Ben finished with an 100-plus passer rating for the second consecutive game to open up a season. He's only opened up a season with a 100-plus passer rating in the first 2 games 3 times prior in his career. We made the Super Bowl in each of those 3 seasons.
So is that 98.7 the same with your B minus?
What's that?
Is that 98.7 the same as your B minus? Fibbed?
That was in lieu of Ben.
The ESPN one's given 98.7. I'm looking at the official, our official stuff there, TA. And they gave him 100.
Well, I'm telling you, Mr. Fro Football gave him 98.7.
100.3. You had to ruin that one for me, huh?
Well, you're the one who said the offense did a B minus after I gave him an A. No, I didn't give him an A. I'm just fucking with y'all.
There it is. So we're on to Houston next week. Houston, we have a problem. And Houston has the worst.
Hey, TA, wait a minute. TA, you think that's funny? You're staying up with me while I edit this, too, by the way.
Oh, that's all right. That's only one. That'll take 32 seconds.
You could put like a quack in there. Remember we used to do when Duck was quarterback?
Yeah.
Have to put a quacker in there.
I'll have to
Thanks,
come up
DA.
with something else.
We're trying to get this out quick for Coach.
Yeah, really. I have an idea what I'm going to cover it up with. So, okay. All right. Anyhow, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you, Dev.
I was just saying, I was trying to get away from the Jekyll and Hydes and F-bombs. We're on to Houston next week. Houston has the worst offensive line in all of football right now, and we'll preview them on Thursday, and we might have another former Steeler on that podcast. We might. He's committed. His responses, aren't quite there yet, but he's committed to being on the podcast on Thursday.
Well, let's hope that pans out for us. But in the meantime, we'll still have something good for you guys out there, Steeler Nation. Don't forget, check out Coach Mularkey, Bill Peterson's podcast, Inside Pro Football. It's a great podcast. They've got their stuff together. I want to thank special thanks to Coach Mularkey again for jumping in. Guys, good to be with you. Talk Steelers after another win. We agree to disagree on some things, but that's what makes us who we are. So great to be with you again here on a Monday night after a Steelers win. Have a great week. We'll look forward to wrapping, giving a preview coming up Thursday. So in the meantime, careful in the hot tub. We'll see you next time. We're out of here.
See you, Steelers Nation.
Told you this wouldn't be a bunch of malarkey, Steelers Nation. Catch you on Thursday.
All right.
Check back next week into the Steelers Realm podcast.